by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Shalom, shalom, family, and welcome to another Bible review. My name is Uzi Alewi, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH, CHOKMAH, BINAH, or better known as D.C.B. We are located 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our phone number is 347-622-9090. You can also reach us at our email address, info@beitdcb.org. That's info@beitdcb.org. Thanking you all once again for joining us on this Sunday morning and for allowing us to come into your homes. We are so thankful and grateful for life. Thank you, the Most High, King of the universe, for food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. For all of the things that he does for us in our lives. We pray that the Most High God will continue to be with us all and bless us. We pray that the Most High God be with the sick, the needy, the fatherless, the widow, those who are in need, even in these times. We pray that the Creator will continue to watch over us and guide us, that he will protect us and keep us, that the Creator will give us knowledge, wisdom, and above all understanding, and that he will cause us to, during this class, that he will cause us to gain understanding. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it on to my brother, Rabbi Chief Binyamin. How are you, Rabbi?
I'm doing good this morning. Hopefully you're doing well. And hopefully everybody out there that is listening is doing well also. And, giving praise and honor to the Most High God and thanking him for all of our lives and this opportunity to have this Bible study this morning, and praying that he would give us all knowledge, wisdom, and understanding as we continue to traverse his word as it is found in the scripture. And we are grateful that even in this time, even this time that we're living in and the things that are happening in the world today, that we still have his word still available to us. We know that there are various ideologies that exist in the world, various interpretations. There are various religions that exist in the world. But, we are speaking to you this day. We come to you in the name of the Most High, and presenting his word as it is laid out in the Bible. And we are grateful again that the Bible is still available for us to read the word of the Most High. So throughout the various generations, the centuries, the millennia that have gone by, the word of God is still available unto us, even though the world may not acknowledge it or even acknowledge him. So those of us that are here, we are continuing to traverse the word of the Bible, the words of the Bible, and praying that the Most High would enlighten our minds so that we would not lead astray, nor have any of us be led astray. And the purpose of this study, as we go week by week, as we do it every Sunday morning, well, the goal is to do it every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, going roughly about an hour, with the various topics and the various subjects that are extracted from the Bible week by week. We do accept topics. We do accept suggestions for things that people would like to discuss. We do take questions from people that have things that they would like to suggest as things that we should go over. Today's topic will be about shaving. Should be very brief in the explanation. Usually what we do each week is we do have a topic again, and we spend roughly about 20 minutes discussing the topic or the subject matter for the week. and then open up the rest of the hour for questions and comments from those that are out there. And again, we are all here to learn from one another. So we do, we're not just looking for questions, but we are also looking for comments as well that will help us all to gain an understanding and all allow us the opportunity for growth. So again, we do this every morning, and these discussions are open for people of all faiths that have the Bible as their foundation. So that's that will go with, as mentioned, that we acknowledge that there are various ideologies that exist in the world. There are various religions, various belief systems, but the purpose of our discussions each week is to focus on those who have the Bible as the foundation of their belief. And we do understand that there are various interpretations, various ideologies themselves that would come from the Bible as well. But for those of us that do read the Bible and study the Bible, our goal and our hope is that we are able to have some sort of convergence to where we will gain a true understanding of the word that the Most High is revealing unto us. So again, we are grateful to the Most High for the opportunity to traverse his word. And we're going to go into our topic this day, go into our studies this day. And as you see on the title, we're going to talk about shaving. Again, this is going to be, should be a brief discussion, a brief overview of the topic. I'm going to go to two sections or two areas of the Holy Scriptures in order for us to have our discussion. So we're going to go to the book of Leviticus chapter 19, and we're going to read verse 27. And in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 27, it says, "You shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou more the corners of thy beard." And the simple explanation of that is, again, with our subject of today in regards to shaving. So we're starting with the first portion of the verse, "You shall not round the corners of your heads." It's basically the practice of that we know today of the shape up. Now you are able to trim your hair down. We'll go through an explanation of that shortly through other verses, but you are able to trim down your hair. But when it comes to the practice of actually doing the shape up or the lineup of the edges of your hairline, that is what's prohibited here from this verse that we read here. "You shall not round the corners of your heads." So again, this is talking about lining up or shaping up your hairline, all the way around, from the front of your hairline, down to the sides of your head and even to the back of the neck as well. So again, you can trim it down, but when the blade actually touches the skin, that's where the prohibition is. Again, so just to give it more of an exact explanation, is when the blade actually touches the skin to remove the hair from the hairline. And then the second part, "Neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard," is the two portions of the verses are actually together. So one is talking about the hairline that goes around your head, and the second is talking about lining up your beard. So again, you are able to trim down your beard. You are able to let your beard grow out. You can trim your beard down, but the natural line or the hairline of your beard must be intact. So that's why it says, "Neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." So that's the prohibition there that we read here. We're going to jump over into the book of Deuteronomy chapter 14, which is not going to talk specifically about the hairline or the beard, but it's related to this subject that we're talking about, so we might as well cover it today as well. In Deuteronomy chapter 14, starting with verse 1, it says, "Ye are the children of Jehovah your God. You shall Ye are the children of Yehovah your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make baldness between your eyes for the dead. So again, as a convention that we do here, as we're having our Bible study, wherever we see the words "the Lord," which appears in many English translations, we do pronounce the name of God in those locations, because that's where you would find it in the Hebrew text. Actually, let me just do this side by side. So again, so where you see the words "the Lord" in the English translations, in the Hebrew text, which is the Hebrew is the original, or the language of the original manuscript of the Holy Scriptures or the Old Testament, you will see the name of God in those locations. And we pronounce it here as Yehovah, which is corresponding to the Yod, He, Waw, He in the Hebrew. And those Hebrew characters correspond to YH, WH in English. So in the various places, you would see what is known as the Tetragrammaton, where you see YHWH in all capital letters. And again, we pronounce it here through our studies as Yehovah. That's our convention. And in many places, you would also hear the pronunciation of God's name as Yahweh. And early on in our Bible studies, somewhere within the first 5 weeks, we did actually have a expanded discussion of the name of God and its pronunciations and where it is, the amount of times you see it appear in the Old Testament, the Holy Scriptures, and why we pronounce it the way that we pronounce it. So just wanted to mention that. And, it's mentioned every time because just to give an understanding of why we don't just say the Lord when we see it in English. There are going to be some things that we see in the English translations that we will refer to the Hebrew. And knowing the name of God helps us to hone in on the God that we are speaking about and the God that is speaking to us. So again, as we're having our Bible study, our purpose is to focus on the Most High God, the true and the living God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. So just wanted to give a brief synopsis of why we do that. So in this verse, again, it says, ye are children of Yehovah your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. We will discuss next week in more detail. So we'll probably refer to this verse again next week, or the next time that we have a Bible study in regards to the cuttings in the flesh and tattoos. We will discuss that next week. So again, this is going to be one of the verses that we refer to, but we just wanted to refer to the second part of this verse where it says, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. Now, we know it specifically says for the dead, but we're also going to focus on not making any baldness between your eyes, which is in regards to what we see today. And just for the sake of clarity and the sake of any controversy, I'll mention that it's my interpretation that the baldness between your eyes is where people do the cuts in their eyebrows or cut off their eyebrows. Some people may not agree with that, so that's why I'll just say that my interpretation or my best understanding of that would be the cutting off of the eyebrows, or putting the marks or the lines in the eyebrows. So again, we are speaking primarily today about shaving, cutting off your hairline around your head, or cutting off your lining off your beard. So basically the prohibition is putting the razor directly to your skin to where it is cutting it off. We're going to read Leviticus chapter 21. There are laws here. These are specifically for the priests. These are laws that are specifically for the children of Aharon, or the children of Aaron. Aaron being Moses' brother, and the lineage of Aaron became the priests of the Most High God for the children of Israel. And within Leviticus chapter 21, they receive a set of laws as well. But in Leviticus chapter 21, verse 5, in regards to the priests themselves, it says, They shall not make baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corners of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. Now, some people would take this verse, and because it's contained in this chapter, and say that when it talks about making baldness upon your head and shaving off the corners of your beard, and in the discussion that we will have next week in terms of cuttings in their flesh, that these commands are specific for the priests alone. But what is to be noted here is that this chapter is basically a manuscript of all of the laws that pertain to the priests. So within it is going to talk about them not being able to make baldness on their head, shave off the corners of their beard, or make cuttings in their flesh, along with other prohibitions that they have. But this would be a separate document, because we read the Bible as a full document, or we read the Torah itself today as a full document. But, you know, in the ancient times when these laws were laid out and Moses was commissioned to write everything down, these would be written on various, within various scrolls. So this chapter would have actually been a manuscript that would have been dedicated to the priests themselves, whereas Leviticus chapter 19, which we read earlier, would be a manuscript which would be for the general population. So it's not something separate in this chapter with the baldness on their head and the shaving of the corners of their beard that is specific for the priests. As we read it in Leviticus chapter 19, that is for everybody. So when everybody was able to read that manuscript, they would see the laws that pertain to them. When the priests read this manuscript, which we know today as Leviticus chapter 21, they would see the things that are specific for them. Because there were also other things that would be mentioned here, the cutting in their flesh, that will also be a prohibition for everybody, as we'll discuss in more detail for our next Bible discussion. So again, that is our discussion. So at this time, we'll take any questions or comments in regards to this subject matter, and also we'll take primarily questions and comments in regards to the subject matter of shaving, or the subject that we talk about today, rounding the corners of the head, more in the corners of the beard, making the cuttings and between the eyes, which as I mentioned would be the eyebrows. And time permitting, I'll go to some other sections in regards to this subject as well, just to give some clarity. But just wanted to focus on the law. And what we've been doing since the beginning of our Bible study is focusing on the laws, the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments that Jehovah God has given to the children of Yisrael, which is actually applicable to the entire world. So these laws do not, as we know of it, go out of style, because we know that God himself is an everlasting God. He's an eternal God. So everything that he teaches us is still applicable to today. And, if the question comes up, maybe not now, but in the question in your mind in regards to offerings, we did cover that a few weeks ago as well in regards to offerings. And yes, technically offerings are applicable today. It's just that offerings are not performed because we are not in the location where offerings could be performed today. And we do not have the correct identity of the priests that will come out of the lineage of Aaron. And later on, as we read in the book of Ezekiel, come out of the lineage of Sadok. Though that correct lineage is not known to us today. So those are the reasons why we would not be able to do offerings. But all of the command, statutes, and judgments of God are applicable today. So that would include today's subject in regards to shaving. So I know this is unfortunately a controversial topic amongst even our own selves, because we know that people do shave, people do line up their hair, but we just have to get back to the word of God. And can't look at any command as minimal. So at this time, we're going to look into the comments and see if there are any questions or any comments in regards to the subject. So in regards to the eyebrows, because there's quite a few questions about the eyebrows. So plucking of the eyebrows would be prohibited based on what we read. And it was asking for a repeat of the eyebrows. So again, that would be in, I'll go back to that, go back to Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 1. And I'll put that back up on the screen for people to read. So again, Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 1, you are the children of Jehovah your God. You shall not cut yourselves nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. So, oh, I should have mentioned it the first time that it did specifically say make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. But when it comes to certain things, I will read this later, as well next week when we talk about the cuttings in the flesh. These practices were done in ancient times by other societies, the Canaanite nations, and primarily the Canaanite nations and other nations among the Hamites. I don't know anything specific in regards to the Egyptians doing that. It might have been a practice that they did as well, but we know definitely the Canaanites did this practice of cutting themselves for the dead, making baldness upon themselves for the dead. But so God is teaching us not just to do that specifically for that reason, but when it comes to just doing it, we should, prohibit ourselves from doing that, period. Again, because we know that God is saying that don't do it for the dead, because that was the practice that was done at that time for the dead. But we should not, anything that's done, period, by foreign nations that God prohibits, we should avoid doing. Even if, you were to say to yourself, well, I'm not doing it for the dead, but you're just doing it because you want to, then you should still prohibit yourself from doing that, because we see that that's a practice in general that God does not like. So hopefully that that repetition covered that question. And when it comes to women shaping eyebrows, these laws are not gender-based, just as thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal. Those commands are not gender-based. Then when it comes to these laws that we read today, they would not be gender-based also. So yeah, the shaping of the eyebrows would be a prohibition for men as well as women. And in terms of the shape-ups, yes, so again, the rounding the corners of the head and would be in regards to the shape-ups or the lineups that people would do to their hairline. So again, there is no prohibition against, trimming your hair down or trimming your beard down. Is when you remove what we would also say is the natural hairline of your head or the natural hairline of your beard. That must always be intact. Even if you was to trim it down again, that would not be a prohibition, but it's the actual shaving off of your natural hairline. Then that would be the prohibition. So don't see any more questions in regards to this specific subject. So the question of who are the Canaanites today, that will require some, I don't want to just jump into an answer. That will require some more research. Now, in terms of, even though the Philistines themselves, depending on interpretation, are not considered a Canaanite nation, but we know that the Philistines, they lived in the land of Canaan. We know that became the land, or that the land became known as Palestine. We do know that you have people today who are Palestinians that are living in that land. And there is some tradition, even amongst the Palestinians, that they do descend from the original Philistines. They may not have the look of the Philistines that we would know of, historically, or the ancient look of the Philistines, but there is some tradition amongst some Palestinians that they descend from the Philistines that were within that region. So, and basically they're saying that, they never left the land. So in regards to the Canaanites, it's possible that you would have Canaanites that would still be dwelling within the land of Israel today to some extent. Probably, on the verge of, or still on the verge of extinction, but possibly still within that region or migrated out as well, because we know through the reading of the book of Joshua and even the book of Judges that the children of Israel, who were supposed to remove all of the Canaanites from the land, did not do so. So the Canaanites continue to dwell within the land of Israel, among the children of Israel. And, you know, some of them could have ended up being part of what we know as the Samaritans, you know, in the northern, after the kingdom of, or the nation of Israel was divided into the two kingdoms, and then you had the northern kingdom, and then you had people that were dwelling there. You know, many of them were brought from the outside, from the Assyrians when they captured the northern kingdom and took the children of Israel into captivity, and they brought certain people in from the various places that they conquered. Those people became known as the Samaritans. So it's quite possible that Canaanites were still dwelling amongst them at that time as well. So just to give a brief overview on that question, but again, that question would require some more research before I would feel comfortable giving a proper answer to everyone about that. So again, and at this time, I don't see any other questions overall. We still have some time for those that may have some questions or comments, but now I'll yield to Chief Uziel, who is here at this time as well, for his comments.
So we covered the topic of shaving today. As you can see, we both sport beards. I never shaved since I've grown a beard, and that was since a teenager. So I've groomed my beard and trimmed it, but like the rabbi said, there's no prohibition against trimming and grooming. As you can see, like right now, I have to get to my mustache because it's growing into. If I let it grow out, it will curl right into my upper lip. So there is room for grooming, but a complete facial shave is not permitted by Torah, and we try to uphold that as best as possible. So yeah, these are laws that many people don't know exist. Many people who think that they know about certain things really don't know laws like these. So as men, we're supposed to grow a beard. So then I don't know if you covered this, but the next question is, if a woman grows facial hair, what should she do? I know that's a curveball for you.
No, it's. I mean, I that wasn't a specific. Somebody asked a question, not that specific question, but and yes, because that is also controversial. But what I would say to that is, again, that these commands that we are given are not gender-based. So we know today, and even well, I shouldn't say just today. We know back then it would not be seemly for a woman to that basically has that I don't want to make up a reason why a woman may have a beard, but I know it would be in regards to hormones and things like that. But I don't want to say something too specific and it actually be wrong, because we do try to be as specific and correct as possible. But we do know that it is a hormonal thing. But if we know that even with it being a hormonal thing, it is a natural, maybe not a seemly thing, but that's why I would say, yeah, these laws are not gender specific, and we're all, male or female, allowed to trim it down. It's in very, very rare instances, because you'll have women that'll have some facial hair. It may not be noticeable. You might see a little mustache. You might see some facial hair in the chin or things like that, which are probably not noticeable unless you're up close. But again, you can trim things down. You can take scissors and cut things down. It's only in a rare instance that you'll see women with full beards. And we know that exists, but that'd be a rare instance. But in terms of facial hair, women that have it, they could just trim it down, cut it down, make it not noticeable. There are probably some other methods that I could probably mention offline, which would still be a prohibition, but would probably prevent the hair from growing back again. So if that's something that people want to, like I said, that would be something I would mention. I would not want to mention that in public, but if that's a route that women want to go to in order to permanently remove their hair, yes, it would be a prohibition of the law for that one time. But I would just put it like that. But other than that, yeah, just the trimming it down, cutting it down with a scissor, making it not visible. That's the best answer I can give. But the short answer is these laws are not gender specific. That would be the short answer.
So I have a question, since I think this is a pretty clean cut thing. So in Numbers chapter 12, verse 2, where Moses speaks about where it says that Miriam and Aaron were upset because of the Cushite woman, or the Ethiopian woman that Moses had taken. Is there any way that, because I had a discussion with someone, and they said to me that was not actually a Cushite woman, but is speaking in terms that she was actually a Midianite. And basically, when you speak in terms, certain parts of the Torah, when it speaks or it mentions someone as being a Cushite, and I'm just paraphrasing, is basically it's like a derogatory term, for lack of a better word. What's your opinion on that?
Today, the term Cushite, Kushi, is a derogatory term that is used by used from or by European Jewry in order to, yes, speak derogatory or derogatorily, if that's actually a word, in regards to people of color, any person of color. So today, yes, that is a derogatory term. But a Cushite is someone that is of the lineage of Cush, who was a son of Ham. And today, Ethiopians who are Cushites should not feel anything wrong with being a Cushite. That's their lineage. So the only how someone would say that is because they use that term themselves as a derogatory term. But in Torah, or within the Holy Scriptures, when we read about Cushites, and again, you were referencing Numbers chapter 12, verse 1, that this would be a Cushite woman that Moses married. We know that he did marry a Midianite. Zipporah was his first wife. And then this wife that he took during this time that Miriam and Aaron were talking about was an Ethiopian woman, or a Cushite woman. So it wouldn't say that, so reading the verse specifically, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. That is pretty much a direct verse right there. That line is direct, that he married a Cushite woman. So it would not be talking about Zipporah, the Midianite woman, because again, we know that he married her in the book of, or we read in the book of Exodus chapter 2, it should be Exodus chapter 2, where he met Zipporah, the daughter of Yithro, and in the land of Midian, and he married Zipporah. So this would be another wife that Moses had taken, which is a Cushite woman, because again, it specifically said for he had married a Cushite woman. Now, if it was going to be something derogatory, then it would probably have given us the actual quotes that Miriam and Aaron was saying. Because again, this is giving us the overview of what was taking place. So the writer of this is saying that Moses had married a Cushite woman. So it can't be a derogatory term that is being used here, because this is the writer saying Moses had married a Cushite woman. Again, the quote that I hear, it would be in verse 2. It says, "And they said, have Jehovah indeed spoken only with Moses? Have he not spoken also with us?" So that is in quotes here in the English, but that is the actual quote of what they were saying. So now if the term Cushite was supposed to be derogatory, then whatever speech that they had in regards to Zipporah in a derogatory term, and using that term Cushite, that would have been in quotations. The writer wouldn't be using a derogatory term. So if that's, would make sense for everyone out there, the writer of the verse in verse 1 would not be using a derogatory term. It would be in quotes if it was going to be if it's going to be said it was a derogatory term. So it would be directly that he married a Cushite woman, which would be an Ethiopian woman, and there's no reference anywhere in scripture where, in regards to Cushite, Cushi, or Cushi, that would be derogatory. A Cushite, as we would see there, because it's talking about a woman. So Cushite in regards to the woman, and Cushi in regards to a man. That these would not be derogatory terms, but specifically talking about someone from Ethiopia. I was going back into the comments. Started from the end and then go back up. Where it says it's unnatural for women to grow facial hair, and then sorry, I'll shave it off. Well, don't apologize to us. That's that's the command of God. So no need to apologize to us. And before going back up, so hopefully that answers that question in regards to the Cushite, Cushi being derogatory and discussion.
I don't know if you want to stay on this or you want to move on from this, because this could be a rabbit hole. But I just want to read exactly what the actual what do you say? I guess the commentary that he posted. Do you want me to read it?
No, go ahead. You saw that? You're online.
Yeah, online.
Yeah,
this is.
Yeah. And then
for
for
if you want me to
Abraham,
read it or if you want to get into this.
No, you can read that so we can finish because we have a little bit of time. And then Abraham has a question as well, so we'll get to that.
Okay, so you could answer, because this would be a rabbit hole. This probably would be for another time.
Okay. What's the explanation of when and spell check probably messed up something there, so I would assume that it says, and your explanation of when a day start, when with 2 or 3 precepts, please. I've heard an evening is part of 2 days. What I would say is that for the latter part of the comment, that an evening would not be a part of 2 days. An evening would only be a part of 1 day. We know when evening comes in, and based on our interpretation and our explanation, when the evening comes in, 1 day ends and another day begins. But to be technical, the evening would not be part of 2 days. The evening would be the beginning of the new day. So in regards to that, so let me pull up some. Well, I'll go to the fastest one to pull up first would be the ever popular Leviticus chapter 23. That would be the ever popular one. When it's talking about, well, Leviticus chapter 23, and we'll probably go over, well, we're not going to go over this chapter in full detail in 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks, we'll have a discussion about Yom Teruah, which is coming up, also known to the world as Rosh Hashanah, and we'll talk about that as well, that explanation. So But in regards to this subject matter, Leviticus chapter 23, in regards to the Day of Atonement. So the Day of Atonement, the discussion or the law in regards to that begins in verse 27 of Leviticus chapter 23, which is how being on the 10th day of this 7th month, which will also be coming up next month as well. The Day of Atonement, known as Yom Kippurim, or shortened to Yom Kippur. So howbeit on the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement, there shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and ye shall bring an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. So that's verse 27. And the passage about the Day of Atonement ends in verse 32. And it says, it shall be unto you a Sabbath for solemn rest, and ye shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening unto evening shall you keep your Sabbath. So we see here that, and this is probably where the confusion, or let me not say confusion. This is probably where the interpretation of the statement that an evening is part of 2 days will come into play. But it's basically saying the evening that is coming in at the conclusion of the 9th day, just to be more specific. That's what it's saying, that the evening that comes in at the conclusion of the 9th day, then it goes on to say from evening unto evening. Or in the Hebrew, it says, Me'erev ad Erev. Erev is the Hebrew word for evening. Shall you keep your Sabbath? And this Sabbath that is talking about here would be the Day of Atonement. So being that this is a Day of Atonement, is in the title alone, it has the word day. The word day in Hebrew is yom. So being that it specifically is using this as Day of Atonement, and we know that this is a full day, is reminding us here that from evening to evening shall you keep your Sabbath, being that it's this Day of Atonement. So this would be an explanation unto us of the fact that this day or a day takes place from evening unto evening. There's also, which requires a little bit more explanation sometimes, but all throughout the book of Genesis chapter 1, where we talk about the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth from verse 1, and light was created on the first day. We know that in verse 5, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. But it concludes with that verse. It says, and there was evening and there was morning one day. So we know that one day consists of an evening. It doesn't say first day here. It says that there was evening and there was morning one day, or Yom Echad, as opposed to later on it gives you the second day, third day, just letting you know this one day. So one day from in the beginning consisted of an evening and a morning. There is also, I probably have to go to more than one verse to talk about that more specifically. We know that there are laws of uncleanness, and there are certain uncleannesses, most of them that are require waiting until sundown. And sundown is equated to evening in various places, and I would have to actually reference more than one location in regards to that. So let me actually take a little bit more time and put in those verses together. And one of them is going to be in Deuteronomy, which specifically talks about the sun going down. So that is going to be, so we'll start there from Deuteronomy chapter 23. Actually, I'm going to be pull that up first. Again, this is talking about an uncleanness. I'll probably just deal with this one verse here, just to be more specific and also to save some time. So Deuteronomy 23 talks about people when they go to war. And we'll start from verse 11. Actually, we'll start from verse 10 just to give an overall understanding of what is being said here. When thou goest forth in camp against thine enemies, then thou shalt keep thee from every evil thing. So again, it's talking about when the children of Israel are going into war. It says, if there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of that which chanceth him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp. He shall not come within the camp. And of course, it's mentioned in by chance by night. This is not a man dealing with a woman at this point. We read about that in Leviticus chapter 15, because we know that at this time it was only men that were going out to war. So if a man became unclean or not clean by reason of that which chanceth him by night, the terminology for that today is a wet dream. So then it says, then he shall go abroad out of the camp. He shall not come within the camp. So in the morning when he wakes up, or one day, whatever, or those men, when they wake up and they realize that they are not clean, then they have to remove themselves. They have to separate themselves from the camp. And it says, but it shall be when evening comes on. So the evening is not here yet. It says when the evening comes on. Or in the Hebrew, which you read on the right-hand side, it says leaf notes erev. So that is before the evening. So before the evening comes in, he shall bathe himself in water. And when the sun is down, he may come within the camp. So when the sun is down, that is equated to evening beginning. So the evening is the beginning of the next day, because we know from other verses, when someone is unclean by a reason such as this, that in other chapters and the verses, it would say that they are unclean until the evening. This is given them more specifically, letting you know that before the evening comes in, so the evening would not be part of 2 days. That person would bathe himself in water before the evening comes in. And when the sun is down, he may come in from the camp, because he is now clean at this point, because the evening has now come in. So just putting all of these verses together would show us that, especially the Leviticus chapter 23, from evening to evening shall you keep your Sabbath, and that Sabbath is known as the Day of Atonement, and that will still be a day, and that day wouldn't be no different than any other day that exists throughout the week and throughout the months and throughout the year. That would be specifically some of the verses that can be used to specify that from evening to evening would be a day. So you would have, or actually, yes, because we say from evening to evening would be a day, but the evening itself would actually only be a part of the day that's beginning. But, just to be the technical, or it's giving, being technical, is saying from evening to evening would be a day, but the evening that comes in after would actually be the beginning of the following day. So the evening, technically ends the evening technically ends one day and begins the next day, but the evening is only part of one day, if that actually makes any sense.
It's another question. Things they don't discuss in church. What's your thoughts on apostate Paul saying, even nature teaches that a man with long hair is a disgrace? 1 Corinthians 11:14.
So if in regards to Paul saying that, it could not be deemed a disgrace. We know Samson himself. Let's not even deal with Samson. We'll mention Samson, but we'll start with the Nazarites. So that is the book of Numbers. Should be chapter 6, just to make sure. Yeah, it is chapter 6. So Numbers chapter 6, verse 1, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, and I'm not going to read the entire chapter, but just to point out certain things here. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall clearly utter a vow, the vow of a Nazarite, to consecrate himself unto Yahweh. So we know that a Nazarite man and woman are consecrated unto Yahweh God. And he or she is not allowed to drink wine or strong drink, or anything that comes from the grapes, all the days of their Nazariteship. But it also says in verse 5, all the days of his vow of Nazariteship, there shall no razor come upon his head, until the days be fulfilled, in which he consecrated himself. Unto Jehovah he shall be holy. He shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow long. So towards the end of this verse here, it says, he shall be holy. He shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow long. So this individual, this man, this woman that has taken the vow of a Nazirite is consecrated unto Jehovah, is holy. And part of their holiness is that they let the locks of the hair of their head grow long. So that would be in contradiction to what Paul is saying. And I know Brother Ricardo, threw in the word apostate, Paul, for this reason, because Paul is teaching that if it's disgraceful for a man to have long hair, where we see that even God himself is saying that the Nazirite who was holy unto him, part of their Naziriteship or part of their holiness is the fact that they have the locks of their hair grow long. And then that would lead us into the discussion of Samson, who was a Nazirite himself. He had long hair. That was, he was commissioned by God to not ever have a razor put upon his head ever, all of his days, because he was a Nazirite from birth. So this would just be one reference to show that would be a contradiction between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So
also, don't forget Judges chapter 5, the Song of Deborah.
So let me pull that up.
At the second verse, I believe.
Yes, and that is actually a very good verse. Thank you for that. Judges chapter 5, beginning from verse 1. Then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, saying, again, this is the song of Deborah and Barak after Jehovah God allowed them to obtain a victory in their battle with Sisera. And just verse 2, which Chief Uziel is referencing here, when men let grow their hair in Israel, when the people offer themselves willingly, bless ye Jehovah. So blessed be Jehovah God when the men let their hair grow in Israel. So we see here through this that it is a tradition and a blessed one that Israelite men would let their hair grow long. We know that also Absalom himself let his hair grow. He just used to cut, or as some translations say, poll, which is basically trim his hair once a year and then weigh it. But of course, he wouldn't, or we hope he wasn't shaving, because there was prohibition against shaving, but there's no prohibition, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of cutting the hair down. But he used to let his hair grow long. So we see even with that, there were various instances or various scenarios where people in Israel would grow their hair long. So that again would be in strict contradiction to the verse that was referenced. And I'll actually you can't if you're doing it on the phone, you can't change it, but I'll show you how to do it online.
On the computer. All right, thank you.
I'll show you just now, as well as everybody. So that was 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 4. I'm just putting that on the screen because that's the verse that was brought up. Where Paul says, every man praying or prophesying having his head covered dishonoreth his head. Oh, no, that's not the verse. He said in verse 14. We will be
11, 14.
Yeah, that's further down. But BINAH, that I just read that by accident. There was a request, and then we've been getting multiple requests to talk about the covering of the head. So let me look at the schedule, so to speak. So I did say next week we're going to talk about tattoos. So we won't be doing, because the week after that we'll talk about Yom Teruah. So, and then the week after that we'll probably talk about Yom Kippur. Then the week after that Sukkot, and the week after that Shemini Atzeret. So we probably won't be able to get into the topic of the covering of the head until sometime in October. So sorry about that. I just had to look at the calendar and see what we'll be talking about the next few weeks. So we definitely will get to that because we have gotten multiple requests online and in person in regards to talking about covering the head. So but just to put that verse that was mentioned, um it says, doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him. Um so we see even okay, this is because I'm just looking at the verse ahead. Um Yeah, this chapter is talking about. So this is probably the chapter that people are referring to when they want us to actually have the discussion of the covering the head. Because this like again, this the topic of the covering of the head, whether it's prohibited or not, whether it's disgraceful or not, has come up numerous times. Not just by people that are Torah based, but by those that because of the confusion, even those that do believe in the New Testament, and because of the confusion that it contains here. But verse 14 specifically says, doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But we see from the verses that we read in Numbers in regards to the Nazarite, the verse that we read in the book of Judges, and even when we read about Absalom, who was, or Absalom is pronounced in English, who was one of the sons of King David, that it was not a shame unto them to have long hair. And there's probably going to be other verses that we did not get to cover, but it was not a shame for those people to have long hair. The only prohibition, as we read from the beginning of our discussion, is the shaving of the head, but you're allowed to trim it, but growing long hair is something that was done. But it goes on to say, but if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. But if the hair was given to the woman as a covering, we know that that hair was given by God. So therefore, that same hair that is given for the man will still be given by God. So that would be in contradiction to say that the hair was given to the woman for a covering, but not given to the man for a covering. Because we know that there are many men that live upon and have lived upon and will live upon the face of the earth that would love to have hair in their head as a covering, that don't have it given as a covering. So it would not be disgraceful for man or woman to grow their hair and vice versa. So the hair is given to both as a glory. So just wanted to cover that, being that that was
all right.
yeah.
These next two questions or three questions, then we're done. Shalom. Does Genesis chapter 1 verse 5, and there was evening and there was morning, the first day, contradict evening to evening being a day?
All right. So what I'll what I'll do is also show you, because you had the question of how to change the translation.
Okay.
So I'll do that while going over to Genesis chapter 1 again. So what you would actually do is just click on the book that you're on, and it will open the resources on the right-hand side, and then you have translations here on the right-hand side.
You're not showing anything.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sharing the screen. All right, no, hold on, sorry. Let me close all of this stuff so I can start to share the screen and then go back and do that. So what you would do is you would see the title of the book and chapter on the top. You would actually click on it, then it would open up the resources on the right-hand side. I'll do it again. So as you click on that, it opens resources on the right-hand side. Then under resources, you click on translations.
Gotcha.
And then you'd have a whole list of translations.
Gotcha.
Not every book has the same amount of translations. So it may be different, but what is standard would be the JPS 1917, which here is listed as current translation. There is unfortunately a gender sensitive edition of the JPS, as you see here. Then there's another Tanakh, the Holy Scriptures JPS.
Excuse me, Rabbi. Why did you say unfortunately?
Because Bible is not gender specific. The commands that are given by God are both applicable to men and women. So it's because, unfortunately, we live in a world where um, trying to phrase it, and it's not what you're thinking. We're unfortunately living in a world where women are denigrated or degraded. So the unfortunate fact of having to have a gender sensitive edition is because we live in a world where women are degraded. So it's unfortunate that women have to have their courage or their grace, installed again, that you would have to have a gender sensitive edition. But God doesn't speak in a manner that is degrading to women. So there should not be a need for women to feel degraded. It's the world that we live in that makes women feel degraded. So that's why there shouldn't be a gender sensitive edition.
Gotcha.
Another reason why there shouldn't be a gender sensitive edition is another unfortunate, which probably would lead into what you and others would be thinking about, is the fact that we live in the world of pronouns.
Gotcha.
So that would be another unfortunate reason. But the main one would be because, women are degraded in this world, and then that would come up. So then you have
Right.
another JPS. So you have
Right.
to be careful. So the one that we use here and the one that is one of the best translations of the Safaria. And okay, so in my opinion, one of the best translations that would be available as we're having discussions with in Safaria would be the 1917. Now, I personally use, and in terms of the print edition, the Koran Jerusalem Bible. Now, the reason I do not use that when it comes to the Bible discussions, because the Koran Jerusalem Bible transliterates Hebrew names. So instead of Deborah, you would actually have the Hebrew pronunciation of Devorah. You would have Barak, Avinoam, Yisrael. So for the
But you
purposes of our
see,
discussion,
but then you see
Mhm.
the stark difference. The second verse, it doesn't mention anything about here. It just says when people willingly offer themselves.
Right. So that would be another problem with this translation. There are going to be some translations that are specific for this book, but not to common.
Gotcha.
Because here, bifroa paroa, I would have to probably just do bifroa, because when you do highlight certain words, it gives you more
Loose. It
transit.
says like loosen.
Right. So
Bifroa,
bifroa,
loosen.
and then let's
Right.
go to the paraot.
Oat. Para oat.
Uh, like, okay, there we go.
Para oat.
So here, one of the translations is long here. The second translation down here.
Locks. Right.
So bifroa, paroa is to let loose
You're here.
or let grow the long here.
Right.
So although I do like the Koran translation overall, there will be some translations, some verses that are not common, but it does for the most part try to hold to the Hebrew. But there are some, because I know we're going a little bit over time right now, but just to give an explanation, this translation does hold to certain commentary that exists. But a lot of translations hold to some form of commentary when they do that. So that's why, especially even the King James, which many people use, and I actually have no problem with King James, where there's a mistranslation. The mistranslations are basically almost purposeful, and you could actually see the purpose in the mistranslations. But overall, the King James translation does have the translation from the Hebrew into the English. So I would actually let me go, and then I'll change back to the JPS again. So just go to the Tanakh, Genesis chapter 1, and then we're gonna go to verse 5, which is the question that came up. And so to change it back to 1917, click on the name, click on translations, then I'll scroll down to, so like you see here for this chapter, there's the JPS 2006 edition, in 1995 of the 5 books of Moses and other translations. So as it says here, there were 13 translations of this chapter here, whereas the other chapter in Judges, it only gave us 12, mainly because there are more translations of the CHOKMAH, which is the first 5 books, than the overall Tanakh, which is the entire Holy Scriptures or Old Testament. So I'll go back and select the 1917. But that's why we, try to keep the Hebrew on the screen as well. So if necessary, we can refer to the Hebrew. So the question is, does verse 5, and God called the light day and the darkness called night, and there was evening and there was morning one day. Does it contradict the thought of evening to evening being a day? And not when you take the verse in totality, because it said there was, so it goes back. So there was, when it goes back, there was an evening. We know that after the evening, you have the night. So before you get to the morning, you would have a night between that evening and the morning. And after the morning, you would have daytime. And then you would have the evening, which will come in again. So that's why I would say at the end of every section, there was evening and there was morning one day. There was evening, there was morning the second day, and so forth. Because again, you would have an evening, you would have a night, of course, that would take place before the morning comes in. You would have a morning, which would be the rising of the sun. You would have a daytime period where the sun is up, and that would constitute that entire day. So it wouldn't be a contradiction to say evening to evening, along with using this verse to say there was evening and there was morning one day. And hopefully that explanation is understood.
We got to kind of wrap it up, but there's a couple of more questions. Yeah. Hold on for 1 minute.
All right. So we could run through them, and then if we have to go back and then have
Shalom,
more expanded conversation.
Shalom, what the reason is studying what is the reason for studying Talmud?
Okay, so the reason for studying the Talmud would not be for everybody. The Talmud is not a requirement for everybody to study. It is a document that does exist, or a library of commentary that does exist. That's started with the latter part of the nation of Israel in the diaspora during the, let's say, during the time period of the Persian Empire, even though they would say historically would predate that. There's no history or true evidence of that. But let's say in terms of the oral Torah or the Mishnah taking place of the children of Israel being under the rule of the Persians, that's where you would have, later on, or actually the Greeks, which will come after the Persians. So between the Persians and the Greeks, you would have the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah or the oral law or the oral traditions, which would come into play. And then you would have much later on after that, which will span decades, you have commentary on those oral traditions, which is known as the Gemara. And then when you put the Mishnah and the Gemara together, that's how you have the library of the Talmud. That, again, is later on in the history of the children of Israel. So there is no word of God coming forth directly out of the Talmud. The Talmud, for those that do want to study it, helps us to get an understanding of what was taking place historically during a certain period of time in the nation of Israel and how they were applying Torah during that time. But the best source of Torah would always be going to the written law. So again, there is no requirement to study Torah, but there would also be no prohibition against studying it, but just realize that it is commentary. And that would be the short answer to that. We could have an actual discussion on Talmud much later in the future. Actually, we can, will do that much later in the future.
Is a man who is naturally going bald also prohibited from shaving the remainder of his hair?
Okay, so overall, the shaving would be a prohibition. So the trimming down, even as low as possible, but as long as it's here, there would be nothing wrong with that. If they want to make it look even, there would be nothing wrong with that. But actually shaving it off, that would be the prohibition, because as we read earlier, the changing or the shaving off of the hairline is the prohibition.
So I guess Paul would think Rastafarians with dreadlocks are a disgrace. That's a question, actually.
Right. So Paul, based on what he said and what we read in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 11:14, he would consider Rastas with their locks to be a disgrace.
So, see here. And that's it for the questions. We've reached, and yes, the Safari app is available on the Apple Store and on the Android Store, it's
Yeah.
called. Android
Yeah.
Store.
Well, Google Play Store.
Google Play Store. Right. So you could download them but like the rabbi said, you're not gonna have all of the different translations of the Tanakh on the app, but on your computer, yes, you could change translations. So thank you all once again for joining us, for being here with us this morning. I pray that the Most High God will bless each and every one of us, cause us to have a prosperous week. And as I say these words, I pray that the Most High God will bless us all. Yivareka Yehovah Yishmareka. Ya'ir Yehovah Panawleka Wikuneka. Yisai Yehovah Panawleka Wayasemlaka. Shalom. May Yehovah bless thee and keep thee. May Yehovah cause his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yehovah lift up his countenance upon thee and may he grant thee peace. Hallelujah. Amen. Shalom, shalom, family. May the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth, be with you all. Hallelujah. Shalom.